The stranger appeared at dawn, a lone figure moving among Samuel Fletcher's prize longhorns with the confidence of someone who belonged there, and his first thought was to reach for his rifle until he saw the gentleness in how those hands worked. Samuel had ridden out early that October morning in 1876, the Colorado air sharp and clean as it swept across his ranch outside La Veta. The sun painted the Sangre de Cristo Mountains in shades of gold and crimson, and the cattle were restless, which meant something was wrong. He had built this ranch from nothing over the past 8 years, every acre hard-won, every head of cattle representing long nights and longer days of backbreaking work. Trespassers were not taken lightly in these parts, especially not ones bold enough to walk right into his herd. But as he drew closer, rifle across his saddle, he realized the trespasser was doing something unexpected. A young woman, her dark auburn hair pulled back in a braid that hung past her shoulders, was examining one of his heifers with careful attention. She wore men's work clothes that had seen better days, trousers patched at the knees and a shirt that hung loose on her frame. What caught his attention was not the audacity of her presence but the skill in her movements. She was checking the heifer's swollen udder, speaking in low, soothing tones. "That is my cow you are touching," Samuel called out, keeping his voice level but firm. The woman did not startle, which surprised him. She glanced up, and he found himself looking into eyes the color of spring grass, bright and clear even from 20 feet away. There was no fear in them, only a calm assessment. "This heifer has mastitis," she said, her voice carrying easily across the morning air. "If you do not treat it soon, you will lose her. Probably the calf too." Samuel urged his horse forward, studying the situation more carefully. He had noticed the heifer acting strangely yesterday, but had planned to check on her this morning. "And I suppose you have a remedy?" "I do, actually." She straightened, wiping her hands on her already dirty trousers. "Hot compresses, frequent milking, and a poultice of comfrey and garlic." "I have some in my pack." "Your pack?" Samuel dismounted, keeping his hand near his sidearm out of habit rather than real concern. Up close, he could see she was young, probably around 22 or 23, with a scattering of freckles across her nose and an expression that spoke of someone who had seen her share of hardship. "And what exactly are you doing on my land, treating my cattle without my permission?" For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Not fear exactly, but perhaps uncertainty. "I needed a place to sleep last night. I saw your cattle and noticed several of them needed attention. I figured if I helped, you might not shoot me when you found me." Despite himself, Samuel felt a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "That is a bold assumption. Better than hiding and definitely getting shot." She held his gaze steadily. "My name is Olivia Carter. I have been working with cattle since I could walk. My father had a ranch in Kansas before he died last year. I know what I am doing." "Kansas is a long way from Colorado." "Yes, it is." She did not elaborate, and Samuel recognized the closed-off expression of someone with stories they were not ready to tell. He looked past her to the heifer, which was clearly in distress. Then he surveyed his small herd, noting details he had been too busy to catch before. Another cow had what looked like an eye infection. One of the steers was favoring its left foreleg. Small things, but the kind of small things that could become big problems if left untended. "Show me what you would do," he said finally. "For the heifer." Relief crossed Olivia's face, quickly masked. "I will need hot water and clean cloth. There is a fire ring near that stand of cottonwoods where I camp during roundup. Use that. I will bring the heifer." For the next 2 hours, Samuel watched as Olivia worked with a competence that could not be faked. She built up the fire efficiently, heated water in his battered coffee pot, and prepared compresses that she applied to the heifer's infected udder with patient care. She talked constantly to the animal, her voice a low murmur of reassurance that seemed to calm the distressed cow better than any rope or restraint. She milked out the infection with steady hands, her jaw set against what was clearly difficult work, then applied the poultice she had promised. "She should be better in a few days if you keep up the treatment," Olivia said, washing her hands in the stream that ran through his property. "4 times a day if you can manage it. The infection is not too far gone." Samuel had been ranching long enough to recognize skill when he saw it. More than skill, he saw dedication, the kind of bone-deep understanding of animals that could not be taught from a book. He made a decision that probably was not wise but felt right nonetheless. "I could use someone who knows cattle," he said. "My ranch hand quit 2 weeks ago, said he was heading to California to find gold or some fool notion. The pay is $30 a month, plus room and board. The bunkhouse is not much, but it is dry and warm." Olivia's head snapped up, water still dripping from her fingers. "You are offering me a job, unless you have somewhere better to be." For a moment her face did something complicated, emotions flickering too fast for him to read. Then she straightened her shoulders and met his eyes directly. "I do not have anywhere else to be. Yes, I accept. Thank you." "Do not thank me yet. This is hard work. Long days, especially now with winter coming. I need to move the herd to lower pasture, repair fences, get everything ready before the first snow. If you cannot keep up, I will have to let you go." "I can keep up," Olivia said, and there was steel in her voice. Samuel extended his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Olivia took it. Her grip was firm, her palm calloused from work. "Samuel Fletcher," he said. "This ranch has been my life for 8 years. I expect anyone who works here to treat it the same." "I understand, Mr. Fletcher. Samuel is fine. Come on, I will show you the bunkhouse, and then we have a full day ahead of us." As they walked back toward the main ranch buildings, Samuel found himself curious about this woman who had appeared out of nowhere. She carried herself with a strange mixture of confidence and wariness, like someone who had learned not to let her guard down. Her clothes were well worn but clean, mended with neat stitches. She owned a pack, a bedroll, and apparently nothing else. A woman alone in Colorado territory was unusual enough, but one with her skills and apparent lack of resources raised questions. Still, Samuel had learned long ago that everyone had their reasons, and a man's past, or in this case a woman's, was their own business unless it affected the present. The Fletcher Ranch was modest by some standards. A sturdy 2-room cabin that Samuel had built himself. A barn that could house 6 horses and had a loft for hay. The bunkhouse that he had added 3 years ago when he finally had enough money to hire help, and various corrals and outbuildings. 300 acres of grazing land, a stream that ran year-round, and a herd of about 80 head of prime longhorn cattle. It was not the biggest spread in Huerfano County, but it was all his, earned through sweat and determination. "The bunkhouse is basic," Samuel said, pushing open the door. "Stove, bed, table. There is a well between here and the main house. Meals are usually around sunup, noon, and sundown. I do the cooking, which means it is edible but not fancy." Olivia stepped inside, and he saw her shoulders relax slightly. It really was not much, just a single room with an iron-framed bed, a pot-belly stove, a scarred wooden table with 2 chairs and some shelves on the wall. But it was clean and solid, and apparently that was enough. "This is good," she said quietly. "Better than good, thank you. Get yourself settled, then meet me at the barn. We need to check the rest of the herd, and I want your opinion on the ones that looked off to me." Olivia nodded, already setting her pack down on the bed. Samuel left her to it, heading back to the barn where his 2 horses waited. Ranger, his big bay gelding, and Daisy, a smaller mare who was getting on in years but still reliable. He would need to see if Olivia could ride. Most ranch hands could, but nothing about this situation was usual. She appeared 15 minutes later, her face and hands freshly washed, her braid redone. She looked marginally more respectable, though the men's clothes still hung oddly on her frame. Samuel made a mental note that she probably needed proper working gear. "Can you ride?" he asked. "Since I was 5. Daisy is gentle but smart. She will test you." Olivia approached the mare with the same calm confidence she had shown with the cattle, letting the horse smell her hand before running her palm down the animal's neck. She murmured something too low for Samuel to hear, and Daisy's ears swiveled forward with interest. When Olivia took the reins and mounted, her seat was natural and easy. She might be half-starved and down on her luck, but the woman knew her way around a ranch. They spent the day riding the property, checking on cattle, identifying problems, and planning the work ahead. Samuel found himself explaining his operation, talking about his plans to expand, his concerns about the coming winter. Olivia listened more than she spoke, but when she offered opinions they were informed and thoughtful. She pointed out a section of fence that would not survive the first heavy snow, spotted signs of coyotes near the northern boundary, and suggested rotating the cattle to different pasture to preserve the grass. By the time the sun started its descent behind the mountains, Samuel realized he had not worked this companionably with anyone in years. His last hand had been competent but surly, more interested in his pay than the work. Olivia attacked every task with quiet determination, never complaining, never slowing down. "We should head back," he said as the temperature began to drop. "Get some food and rest. Tomorrow we start moving the herd." Over dinner, simple fried salt pork, beans, and coffee, Samuel found himself studying his new employee. She ate with focused attention as if the plain food was a feast. Too thin, he realized. When had she last had a decent meal? Where in Kansas was your father's ranch? He asked, keeping his tone casual. Olivia looked up from her plate. "Near Abilene, 300 acres. He ran cattle until the grasshoppers came in '74, wiped out everything. We tried to rebuild, but between the debts and the drought, we lost it all. He died 6 months after we lost the ranch. His heart just gave out. And your mother died when I was 12. Fever." Olivia's voice was matter-of-fact, but Samuel heard the pain underneath. "It was just me and my father after that. He taught me everything he knew about cattle and horses. Said I was better with animals than most men he had worked with." "He was not wrong," Samuel said. "What happened after he died?" Olivia was quiet for a long moment, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup. "The bank took everything. I had nowhere to go and no money. I tried to find work, but most ranchers would not hire a woman, or if they would, it was not for ranch work." Her jaw tightened. "I decided to head west, figured Colorado might have more opportunities. I have been traveling for 3 months, taking odd jobs where I could find them." 3 months on the road, alone. Samuel felt a surge of anger at the world that would put a skilled worker in such a position, but he kept his voice even. "Well, you have a job now, as long as you want it." Something shifted in Olivia's expression, a crack in the careful walls she had built. "I will not let you down." "I know," Samuel said, and found that he meant it. The next weeks fell into a rhythm that felt both new and oddly familiar. They worked from dawn until dusk, moving cattle, repairing fences, preparing for winter. Samuel had run the ranch alone for 2 weeks since his last hand quit, and having help again made him realize how much he had been struggling. But it was more than just having an extra pair of hands. Olivia proved herself invaluable, spotting problems before they became serious, working with the horses and cattle with an intuitive understanding that impressed him more each day. She was also easy to work with in a way his previous hands had not been. She anticipated what needed doing, worked without complaint, and showed genuine care for the animals and the land. They developed an unspoken communication, the kind that came from shared purpose and compatible temperament. Samuel found himself watching her more than was probably appropriate for an employer. The way she laughed when one of the calves kicked up its heels in apparent joy. The concentration on her face when she was mending tack, her fingers quick and sure. The rare moments when she forgot to guard her expressions, and he caught glimpses of deep sadness, or loneliness, or simple weariness. She was beautiful. He realized one afternoon as they worked together to pull a yearling out of a muddy section near the creek. The sun caught her hair, turning it to burnished copper, and when she smiled in triumph as they freed the struggling animal, something in his chest tightened. This was dangerous territory. She was his employee. She had nowhere else to go, which meant any feelings he developed would put her in an impossible position. Samuel had always prided himself on being honorable, and taking advantage of a woman in Olivia's situation would be the opposite of honorable. But knowing that did not stop the feelings from growing. November arrived with the first serious snow, and Samuel found himself grateful they had prepared well. The cattle were in the lower pasture, close enough to the barn that they could provide supplemental feed if needed. The fences were solid. The barn and bunkhouse were stocked with supplies. They were as ready for winter as they could be. One evening, Samuel invited Olivia to the main house for dinner. It had become an occasional habit, cooking together and eating in the relative comfort of his cabin rather than the sparse bunkhouse. They were preparing a stew, working side by side in the small kitchen when Olivia suddenly spoke. "Why did you hire me? Really?" Samuel looked up from the potatoes he was chopping. "What do you mean? You knew nothing about me. I was trespassing on your land." "I could have been anyone planning anything." She stirred the pot on the stove without looking at him. "Most men would have chased me off at gunpoint. You offered me a job." Samuel considered his answer carefully. "You were helping my cattle. That told me something about your character. And I needed help. Sometimes things line up the way they are supposed to. Just like that, just like that." He scraped the potatoes into the pot. "Though I will admit, I am glad I made that choice. You are the best hand I have ever had." Olivia did look at him then, her green eyes searching his face. "You mean that?" "I do not say things I do not mean." She was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Neither do I. So when I say thank you for taking a chance on me, for giving me not just a job but a place to belong, I mean it more than I know how to express." The sincerity in her voice made Samuel's throat tight. "You earned your place here, Olivia. Every day." They finished cooking in comfortable silence, but something had shifted between them. The air felt charged with unspoken words, possibilities that hovered just out of reach. After dinner, they sat by the fire, coffee cups in hand. Snow fell steadily outside, muffling the world in white silence. Olivia stared into the flames, her expression distant. "What are you thinking about?" Samuel asked. "How strange life is. 3 months ago I had nothing. I was sleeping in barns when I could, under bridges when I could not. I was so tired and hungry and scared, though I tried not to admit the scared part." She turned to look at him. "Now I have work I love, a place that feels like home and a friend. It feels too good to be real sometimes." "It is real," Samuel said firmly. "You are not going to wake up and find this gone." "How can you promise that?" "Because I do not want you to go." The words came out more intense than he had planned, and Samuel saw Olivia's eyes widen. He should backtrack, make it about the ranch, about her work, but suddenly he was tired of being careful. I look forward to working with you every day. I find myself thinking about things I want to show you, stories I want to tell you. When you smile, it makes my whole day better. And that probably is not appropriate for me to say as your employer, but it is the truth. Olivia set down her coffee cup with careful precision. Samuel, I need you to be very clear right now. Are you saying what I think you are saying? His heart was pounding, but he held her gaze. If you think I am saying that somewhere along the way I started developing feelings for you that go beyond employer and employee, then yes, that is what I am saying. And if that makes you uncomfortable, we can pretend this conversation never happened. Your job is not dependent on how you respond. I need you to know that. And if I said I have been lying awake in the bunkhouse for weeks, thinking about you, Olivia's voice was barely above a whisper. If I said that I look for excuses to make you laugh because your laugh is the best sound I know. If I said that the thought of leaving this ranch, leaving you, makes me feel like I cannot breathe. Samuel stood, crossed the small space between them, and knelt beside her chair. Then I would say, I have been a fool for waiting this long to tell you how I feel. Olivia reached out, her work-roughened hand cupping his cheek. I am not sure I believe this is really happening. Believe it, Samuel said, covering her hand with his own. I am falling in love with you, Olivia Carter. Actually, I think I already fell. I just did not know when it happened. October 15th, Olivia said, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. When you trusted me to treat your heifer, that was when I started falling. Samuel laughed, the sound full of wonder and joy. That's specific. I do not forget important moments. He stood, drawing her up with him. For a heartbeat, they simply looked at each other. Years of loneliness and hard-won survival visible in both their faces, along with something new and fragile and precious. Then Samuel leaned down and kissed her, gentle and questioning. Olivia's arms came around his neck, and she kissed him back with a sweetness that made everything else fall away. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Samuel rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me, not in the bunkhouse. Here. Not as my employee, but as my partner in everything. Samuel, we have known each other barely 2 months. I know, and if you need more time, I will wait. But I also know what I feel, and I know that I want to build a life with you. Everything I have, everything I am building, it means more when I think about sharing it with you. Olivia pulled back enough to look into his eyes. I want that too, more than anything, but I need to tell you something first, about why I really left Kansas. Samuel's stomach tightened, but he nodded. Tell me. They sat back down, and Olivia took a deep breath. After my father died, I went to work for a rancher named Horace Martin. He was in his 50s, owned a big spread, and he hired me on as a cook and housekeeper. I was desperate, and it was the only job I could find. At first it was fine. But then he started making advances, told me if I was nice to him, he would take care of me. When I refused, he got angry, threatened to spread lies about me, make sure no one in the county would hire me. Said I had stolen from him. Samuel felt anger rising, hot and fierce, but he kept his expression calm. What did you do? I ran. Packed my things in the middle of the night and left. I was scared he would follow through on his threats, ruin what little reputation I had. So I decided to go somewhere he could not reach me. I have been terrified this whole time that you would hear some rumor, believe I was a thief or worse, and send me away. Tears glinted in her eyes. I should have told you sooner. You deserve to know. Samuel reached out and took both her hands in his. Listen to me. That man was a predator who tried to take advantage of a woman with no options. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. And if he or anyone else ever tries to spread lies about you, they will have me to answer to. You are not defined by what was done to you. You are defined by your strength, your skill, your kindness, and the fact that you kept going even when everything was stacked against you. Olivia let out a shaky breath. You are not angry I did not tell you. I am angry at what happened to you. I am not angry at you for protecting yourself. He squeezed her hands gently. Thank you for trusting me with this. It does not change anything except to make me respect you even more. She pulled her hands free, but only so she could throw her arms around him, burying her face in his shoulder. Samuel held her close, feeling her body shake with silent sobs that seemed to come from some deep, unhealed place. He simply held her, one hand stroking her back until the storm passed. I am sorry, she whispered against his shirt. You have nothing to apologize for. Let it out. You are safe here. Eventually, Olivia pulled back, wiping at her eyes. I am making your shirt wet. I have other shirts. She laughed, the sound watery but genuine. How are you real? I could ask you the same thing. Samuel brushed a strand of hair from her face. So what do you think? Are you willing to take a chance on building something with me? Yes, Olivia said without hesitation. Yes, I am. They kissed again, and this time it was deeper, more certain. When they finally separated, both smiling, Samuel said, You do not have to move in tonight if you are not ready. We can take this at whatever pace feels right. Actually, Olivia said, a mischievous glint in her eye, that bunkhouse is awfully cold and this cabin has a much better stove. Samuel grinned. Well, we cannot have you freezing, though fair warning, I snore. Good thing I sleep like the dead then. They laughed together, the sound filling the small cabin with warmth. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the Colorado landscape in pristine white. Inside, two people who had both known loss and loneliness began the tentative, wonderful process of building something new. The winter passed in a blur of hard work and stolen moments of happiness. Olivia moved her few possessions into the main cabin, and they settled into a domestic routine that felt as natural as breathing. They worked side by side during the day, tending the cattle, maintaining equipment, managing the 100 small tasks that kept a ranch running. In the evenings, they cooked together, read by firelight, played cards, and talked about everything and nothing. Samuel learned that Olivia had a quick wit and a talent for storytelling. She could take the most mundane ranch incident and turn it into something funny or profound. She loved to read and had a small collection of books she had somehow kept through all her travels. She had strong opinions about politics, cattle breeding, and the best way to make biscuits. She was terrible at poker, but refused to give up trying to beat him. Olivia learned that Samuel had come to Colorado from Missouri after the war, looking for a fresh start. He had worked as a hired hand for 5 years, saving every penny before buying this land. He was quieter than she was, more prone to thoughtful silences, but when he spoke it was always worth listening to. He had a deep respect for the land and animals in his care. He was unfailingly honest and fair-minded, and he loved her with a steadiness that still took her breath away. They became lovers on a snowy January night, the cabin warm from the stove, the world outside frozen and silent. It was tender and passionate and occasionally awkward in the way of new lovers still learning each other. Afterward, lying tangled together in Samuel's bed, Olivia felt a peace she had never known before. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. Samuel's arms tightened around her. I love you too. More than I knew I could love anyone. Will you marry me? The words surprised Olivia even as she said them. Samuel propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her in the dim light from the dying fire. Did you just propose to me? I suppose I did. Is that completely improper? Probably. I do not care. He cupped her face in his hand. Yes, Olivia Carter, I will marry you. Though I should warn you, I was planning to propose next week. I even bought a ring when I went into Lavetta for supplies last month." "You did?" Olivia felt tears prick her eyes again, but these were happy tears. "I did. Wait here." Samuel climbed out of bed, completely unself-conscious in his nakedness, and rummaged in a drawer. He came back with a small cloth pouch, climbed back under the covers, and pulled out a simple gold band with a small blue stone. "It is not fancy, but the stone reminded me of the Colorado sky. The jeweler in town said it was a sapphire. Samuel, it is perfect." Olivia held out her hand, watching as he slid the ring onto her finger. "It fit perfectly. How did you know my size?" "I traced one of your work gloves, figured it was close enough." He kissed her hand just above the ring. "So now we are engaged." "Now we are engaged," Olivia agreed, and pulled him back down for a kiss that quickly turned into something more. They were married in March, as soon as the worst of the winter weather broke. It was a simple ceremony in Lavetta, performed by the local minister with 2 townspeople as witnesses. Olivia wore a new dress, the first she had owned in years, a simple but pretty blue cotton that Samuel said matched her ring. Samuel wore his Sunday best, his hair neatly trimmed, looking more nervous than she had ever seen him. "You take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part," the minister intoned. "I do," Samuel said, his voice steady and sure, his eyes locked on Olivia's. "And do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do," Olivia said, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "Then, by the power vested in me by the territory of Colorado, I now pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss your bride." Samuel pulled Olivia into his arms and kissed her thoroughly, not caring that they had an audience. When they finally broke apart, both laughing, the witnesses clapped and the minister smiled indulgently. They celebrated with dinner at the town's only restaurant, a modest affair but a luxury nonetheless. Samuel held Olivia's hand across the table, his thumb tracing circles on her palm, and she felt like the luckiest woman alive. "What are you thinking about?" Samuel asked. "That a year ago I never could have imagined being this happy. That morning when you found me with your cattle, I was at the end of my rope. I did not know how much longer I could keep going, and now I have everything I ever wanted." "So do I," Samuel said softly. "You saved me too, you know. I did not realize how lonely I was until you arrived. This ranch was my life, but it was not enough. It was just work, just survival. You made it a home." They rode back to the ranch as the sun set, painting the mountains in shades of pink and gold. Olivia rode behind Samuel on Ranger, her arms wrapped around her husband's waist, her cheek pressed against his back. Mrs. Olivia Fletcher, she thought. It still felt unreal, too good to be true, but it was true. She had a home, a husband, a future. And as they crested the rise and saw the ranch spread out below them, the cabin with smoke rising from its chimney, the barn solid and weathered, the cattle dotting the pasture, Olivia felt a sense of belonging so profound it brought tears to her eyes. "Welcome home, Mrs. Fletcher," Samuel said, helping her down from the horse. "I like the sound of that," Olivia said, and kissed him in the fading light. That spring and summer were the happiest of Olivia's life. The ranch thrived under their joint management. Samuel's business sense combined with Olivia's skill with the cattle created a partnership that was more effective than either of them could have been alone. They bought more land, expanded the herd, and even hired 2 additional hands to help with the increased workload. Olivia took over much of the day-to-day management of the cattle. her expertise finally getting the recognition it deserved. The hired hands, initially skeptical about taking orders from a woman, quickly learned that she knew more about cattle than most men twice her age. Samuel backed her authority completely, making it clear that disrespecting his wife meant losing their jobs. They hosted their first roundup that fall, with neighboring ranchers coming to help move cattle and share news. Olivia cooked for the crew, managed the logistics, and still found time to work alongside the men, earning grudging respect even from the most traditional cowboys. "Your wife is something special," one of the neighboring ranchers, Tom Wilson, told Samuel one evening around the fire. "Never seen a woman handle cattle like that. She is the best rancher I know," Samuel said simply. "I am lucky she agreed to marry me." Olivia overheard the conversation and felt warmth spread through her chest. Samuel never qualified his respect for her, never diminished her abilities to make other men comfortable. He was proud of her, and he showed it. In November, Olivia realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks but wanted to be certain before saying anything. When she finally told Samuel, he swept her up in his arms, spinning her around the kitchen despite her laughing protests. "We are going to have a baby," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "A son or daughter, or both if they run in families," Olivia teased. "My grandmother had twins." "I do not care if we have 10 children or none. I just want you healthy and happy." Olivia cupped his face in her hands. "I am both. I have never been healthier or happier in my life." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the winter. Olivia continued working on the ranch, though Samuel insisted she avoid the more strenuous tasks. They prepared the cabin for the baby, building a cradle from pine wood and setting up a corner of their bedroom as a nursery. Olivia sewed baby clothes from soft fabric she bought in town, her hands creating tiny garments with careful stitches. In late May of 1878, Olivia went into labor. Samuel rode to La Veta to fetch the midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Henderson who had delivered half the babies in the county. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Samuel, pacing outside the bedroom door, thought he might go mad with worry. But finally, as the sun rose on a beautiful spring morning, he heard the sharp cry of a newborn. Mrs. Henderson emerged a few minutes later, smiling. "You have a son, Mr. Fletcher, a big healthy boy, and your wife did beautifully." Samuel rushed into the bedroom. Olivia lay propped up against the pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up as he entered, tears streaming down her face. "Samuel, come meet your son." He approached the bed as if in a dream, looking down at the impossibly small face peeking out from the blankets. The baby had a shock of dark hair, a tiny nose, and was currently yawning widely, showing pink gums. "He is perfect," Samuel breathed. "You are amazing." "I am so proud of you. We did this together," Olivia said softly. "Do you want to hold him?" Samuel carefully took the baby, cradling the tiny body against his chest. The baby opened his eyes, unfocused but somehow seeming to look right at his father. Samuel felt his own eyes fill with tears. "Hello, son. Welcome to the Fletcher Ranch. We are going to teach you everything we know." They named him Michael Samuel Fletcher, after Olivia's father and Samuel himself. Little Michael was a good baby, sleeping reasonably well and eating with enthusiasm. Olivia proved as competent a mother as she was a rancher, handling the challenges of new motherhood with the same determination she brought to everything else. Samuel found himself falling even more deeply in love with his wife as he watched her with their son. The tenderness in her face as she nursed the baby, the gentle songs she sang to soothe him to sleep, the fierce protectiveness in her eyes when anyone came near her child. She was a force of nature, his Olivia, and he thanked God every day that she had wandered onto his ranch that October morning 2 years ago. As Michael grew from infant to toddler, the ranch continued to prosper. They had good years and lean years, as all ranchers did, but they faced everything together. When a harsh winter in 1880 killed a dozen head of cattle, they mourned the loss and planned how to rebuild. When a wet spring in 1881 resulted in excellent grass and healthy calves, they celebrated their good fortune. Michael turned into a sturdy, curious boy who wanted to be everywhere his parents were. By the time he was 3, he was toddling after his father, trying to help with chores in his childish way. Samuel was an attentive, affectionate father, spending hours playing with his son, teaching him about animals and the land, reading to him before bed. "He is going to be a rancher like us," Olivia said one evening, watching Samuel and Michael examine a frog they had found by the creek. "Or maybe he will want to be a doctor or a teacher or a merchant," Samuel said. "Whatever he wants to be, we will support him, of course. But I think the ranch is in his blood." In the fall of 1882, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was harder than the first, and she suffered from terrible morning sickness that lasted well into the 4th month. Samuel took over more of her usual work, and their hired hands stepped up to help. 4-year-old Michael tried to help in his own way, bringing his mother water and patting her hand solemnly when she felt ill. "I am sorry I am not more help," Olivia said miserably one afternoon. "You are growing our child. That is the most important work there is," Samuel said firmly. "Everything else can wait." Their daughter was born in March of 1883, a tiny, delicate baby with her mother's auburn hair and her father's brown eyes. They named her Catherine Rose Fletcher, after Samuel's mother who had died when he was young. If Michael had been an easy baby, Catherine was easier, sleeping through the night at 6 weeks and gurgling happily at anyone who paid attention to her. "We make good babies," Olivia joked, nursing Catherine while Michael played nearby with his wooden horses. "We do," Samuel agreed, sitting beside her and draping an arm around her shoulders. "We make a good life." It was true. The ranch now covered over 1,000 acres. They ran 200 head of cattle and had established a reputation for quality stock. They had built additions onto the cabin, expanding it into a comfortable home with 4 bedrooms and a proper kitchen. They employed 4 full-time ranch hands and hired more during roundup season. But more than the material success, they had built something rarer and more valuable. They had partnership, respect, and love that deepened with every passing year. They still worked side by side, though Olivia's time was more divided now between the ranch and the children. They still talked for hours, still found reasons to laugh every day. They still held hands when they walked, still kissed like newlyweds, still looked at each other with wonder that this was their life. When Catherine was 2 and Michael was 6, Olivia and Samuel decided to take the children into La Veta for the 4th of July celebration. The town had grown over the years, adding new businesses and homes as more settlers arrived. It was a festive atmosphere with bunting hanging from buildings, food stalls set up in the main street, and everyone in their Sunday best. Michael ran ahead, fascinated by everything, while Samuel carried Catherine on his shoulders. Olivia walked beside them, her hand in Samuel's, watching her family with deep contentment. "Olivia Fletcher." "Is that you?" The voice made Olivia freeze. She turned slowly to see Horace Martin, the rancher from Kansas who had driven her away 7 years earlier. He was older, grayer, but she recognized him immediately. Fear spiked through her. Samuel felt her hand tighten on his and looked at her face. He saw the fear there, the sudden paleness, and his jaw tightened. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice cold. "Horace Martin." "I knew Miss Carter, or I guess it is Mrs. Fletcher now, back in Kansas." Martin's eyes swept over Olivia with an expression that made Samuel want to hit him. "Did not expect to see you here. Thought you had run off to California." "California, Colorado, what does it matter?" Olivia said, finding her voice. She straightened her shoulders and Samuel felt pride surge through him at her courage. "I found a better life here. So I see. Husband, children, looking prosperous. You did well for yourself." There was an ugly undertone to Martin's words. Samuel handed Catherine to Olivia and stepped forward. He was a big man, made strong by years of ranch work, and he used every inch of his height to loom over Martin. "I know who you are. I know what you did, how you treated my wife when she was alone and vulnerable, and I am going to say this once. If you ever speak to her again, if you ever even look at her in a way I do not like, you will answer to me. Do you understand?" Martin paled, stumbling back a step. "I do not know what she told you, but I never did anything wrong. You preyed on a woman who had no one to protect her. That makes you the worst kind of coward." Samuel's voice was low and deadly. "Stay away from my family, stay away from my wife, or I promise you will regret it." Martin looked at Olivia, perhaps hoping for some softness, some sign of the frightened woman who had fled his ranch. Instead, he found her standing tall, her children close, her eyes hard. "You have no power over me," Olivia said clearly. "You never did, really. I just did not know it then. I am not alone anymore. I have a family who loves me and a life I built with my own hands. You are nothing but a bad memory, and a distant one at that." Martin turned and left without another word, disappearing into the crowd. Samuel immediately turned to Olivia, cupping her face in his hands. "Are you all right?" "Yes," Olivia said, and to her surprise she meant it. "I am perfectly all right. For years I was terrified of seeing him again, afraid he would somehow ruin everything. But standing here with you and our children, I realized he cannot touch me. He has no power at all. He never had power, just cruelty." Samuel kissed her forehead. "I am so proud of you." "Mama, who was that man?" Michael asked, tugging on her skirt. "Someone from a long time ago, sweetheart, no one important." Olivia took Michael's hand and shifted Catherine to her hip. "Now, I believe there are supposed to be firecrackers and lemonade somewhere in this town. Should we go find them?" Michael's face lit up, and the shadow of the encounter faded as they rejoined the festivities. But that night, lying in bed with Samuel's arms around her, Olivia felt as though a weight she had carried for years had finally lifted. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness, "for standing up for me today, for believing me all those years ago when I told you about him." "You never have to thank me for that," Samuel said. "You are my wife, my partner. I will always stand with you. I love you so much. I love you too, now and always." The years continued to pass in the steady rhythm of ranch life. Michael grew into a capable young man who loved the ranch as much as his parents did. He learned to ride almost before he could walk, showed a natural talent for working with cattle, and demonstrated his father's steady temperament and his mother's intuition with animals. By the time he was 10, he was a genuine help on the ranch, not just a child playing at work. Catherine was different, quieter, and more thoughtful. She loved animals as much as her brother, but also showed an interest in books and learning. Olivia taught her to read early, and Catherine devoured every book she could get her hands on. She had a gentle way with the younger animals, often caring for orphaned calves or foals with patient dedication. In 1888, when Michael was 10 and Catherine was 5, Olivia gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. The pregnancy had been difficult, and the birth even more so. Samuel spent an agonizing night pacing while the midwife and doctor from Lavetta worked with Olivia. When it was finally over and both babies were crying lustily, the doctor pulled Samuel aside. "Your wife is strong, but that was a hard birth. I would not recommend more children. Samuel had nodded, just grateful that Olivia had survived. When he entered the bedroom, she was propped up with a baby on each side, looking exhausted but triumphant. "2 more Fletchers," she said with a tired smile. "I suppose I overdid it." Samuel sat carefully on the edge of the bed, looking at his new son and daughter in wonder. "What should we name them?" They decided on Daniel Thomas Fletcher and Emma Grace Fletcher. The twins were a handful in ways that single babies had not been, but Michael and Catherine proved helpful older siblings, and the ranch family pitched in to help. Olivia and Samuel navigated the chaos with humor and patience, supporting each other through sleepless nights and the endless demands of 2 infants. But they also celebrated the joy. The first time the twins smiled at each other, only weeks old, already aware of their special bond. The way Daniel would cry if Emma was out of sight. The way Emma calmed when Daniel was placed beside her. Michael's pride in his younger siblings, Catherine's gentle care of them. As the twins grew, the Fletcher family became a fixture in Huerfano County. Samuel and Olivia were respected ranchers, known for running a fair operation and treating their employees well. Their children were well-mannered but spirited, the kind of kids who were welcome everywhere. The ranch prospered, becoming one of the most successful in the region. But success never changed Samuel and Olivia's essential nature. They still worked hard, still treated everyone with respect, still found time for each other despite the demands of raising 4 children and running a large operation. They still held hands when they walked. They still danced in the kitchen when a particular song struck them. They still looked at each other with love and gratitude. On a warm October evening in 1891, Samuel and Olivia stood on the porch of their home, watching the sun set over the mountains. Michael was working with one of the hands in the barn. Catherine was inside reading to the twins. The cattle lowed contentedly in the distance. Everything was peaceful. 15 years, Olivia said softly. "Hard to believe it has been 15 years since I showed up uninvited and started treating your cattle." "Best trespasser I ever met," Samuel said, pulling her close. "You changed my life, Olivia, made it immeasurably better." "You saved mine," Olivia countered. "I was lost, alone, and terrified. You gave me a home, a purpose, and a love I never dreamed possible." "I think we saved each other," Samuel said. "Sometimes I try to imagine what my life would be like if you had not shown up that morning. It is impossible. This ranch, these children, this life we built, it is everything I never knew I needed." Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to purple. "Do you remember what you said that first day, when you offered me the job?" "I said if you could not keep up, I would have to let you go. You did. I was terrified I would fail, that I would lose the first chance I had been given in so long." Olivia smiled. "I do not think you knew what you were getting into." "Neither did you," Samuel pointed out. "I am not easy to live with. I get stubborn about my methods. I work too much. I am terrible at expressing my feelings." "You are the best man I know," Olivia said firmly. "You are honest, hardworking, kind, and you love our family with everything you have. And you have gotten much better at expressing your feelings. I had a good teacher." Samuel turned her in his arms so they were facing each other. The fading sunlight painted her hair in shades of copper and gold, and despite the years and the hard work of raising 4 children, she was still the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. "I love you, Olivia Fletcher, more today than yesterday and less than I will tomorrow." "Where did you learn to say things like that?" Catherine has been reading poetry again. "I might have borrowed a line or 2. Olivia laughed, the sound as bright and clear as it had been 15 years ago. "Well, it worked. I love you too, Samuel Fletcher, today, tomorrow, and always." They kissed as the stars began to appear overhead, and somewhere in the distance a coyote called to its mate. The Fletcher ranch lay peaceful in the gathering darkness, a testament to hard work, faith, and the transforming power of love. Inside the house, Michael poked his head out the door. "Are you two coming in? Catherine made stew and the twins are getting cranky." "We are coming," Samuel called back, but he stole one more kiss before releasing his wife. They walked inside together, hand in hand as always, ready to share dinner with their children and continue the life they had built together. A life that had started with an act of trespass and grown into something neither of them could have imagined. A life filled with hard work and simple joys, challenges met and overcome, and love that grew deeper with every passing year. The ranch continued to thrive under their joint management. By the time the new century arrived, the Fletcher Ranch was one of the most successful operations in southern Colorado. Michael was 22, a full partner in the ranch operation, with his father's business sense and his mother's skill with cattle. Catherine was 17, helping manage the household and teaching her younger siblings while also studying to become a teacher herself. The twins, Daniel and Emma, were 12, full of energy and mischief, but already showing signs of following in their family's footsteps. Samuel was now 50, his dark hair shot through with silver, his face weathered by years in the sun and wind. But he was still strong, still capable, and still devoted to his wife and family. Olivia, at 46, had laugh lines around her eyes and calluses on her hands from decades of work. But she moved with the same determination and grace she always had. One spring morning in 1902, Olivia and Samuel rode out to check on the herd together, something they still did whenever possible despite having competent hands to handle such tasks. It was their time, a chance to be just the two of them amid the demands of family and business. They found a spot on a small rise overlooking the ranch, dismounted, and sat together on a fallen log. The view was spectacular. The ranch spread out below them, the mountains rising in the distance, the sky impossibly blue. "You ever regret it?" Olivia asked suddenly. "Taking a chance on a strange woman you found with your cattle?" Samuel looked at her in surprise. "Not for a single second. Why would you ask that?" "I was just thinking about how different both our lives would have been if you had chased me off that morning. If you had not been willing to take a risk on someone with nothing to offer but skills and determination." "You had everything to offer," Samuel said firmly. "You still do. This ranch, our family, everything we have built, it is because we did it together. I could never have accomplished half of this alone." He took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "Olivia, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. Every day I wake up grateful that you walked into my life. Even when I am stubborn and argumentative, especially then." Samuel smiled. "You challenge me, make me think differently, push me to be better. Our partnership works because we are not the same. We complement each other." Olivia rested her head on his shoulder. "I never thought I would have this. A home, a family, a partner who respects me as much as he loves me. After my father died, after what happened with Martin, I thought my life was over. I thought I would spend the rest of my days just surviving, never truly living. Instead, you built a life that is bigger and richer than either of us dreamed," Samuel said. "And you did it through your own strength and determination. I might have given you a chance, but you took that chance and made something magnificent from it." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, simply being together. A hawk circled overhead, riding the thermals. The cattle moved slowly across the pasture below. In the distance, they could see Michael working with several hands, teaching them the techniques his mother had taught him. "He is going to be a better rancher than either of us," Olivia said with pride. He learned from the best. Samuel squeezed her hand. What about Catherine? Is she still planning to go to Denver for teacher training? Yes, in the fall. She is excited and terrified in equal measure. She will be brilliant at it. She has your patience and your way of making complicated things understandable. And your steady calm when things go wrong, Olivia added. The twins are going to miss her terribly. We all will. But she needs to follow her own path, just like we taught her. They eventually rode back to the ranch, but that conversation stayed with both of them. It was a reminder of how far they had come, how much they had built together, and how grateful they were for the chance encounter that had changed both their lives. That summer, the Fletcher family hosted a celebration for their 25th wedding anniversary. Neighbors and friends came from all over the county, filling the ranch with laughter and music. A long table was set up in the yard, laden with food prepared by Olivia and her daughters with help from neighbor women. The men gathered around to share stories and smoke, while children ran wild in the fading light. As the sun set, Samuel stood and called for attention. The crowd quieted, turning to face him. I am not much for speeches, Samuel began, his voice carrying across the yard. But 25 years ago I married the woman who changed my life. Olivia, you wandered onto my property without permission, and I had the good sense to realize you were exactly what I needed. You have been my partner, my best friend, and my greatest love. You made this ranch into a home and gave me a family I treasure more than words can express. Everything good in my life started the day I found you tending my cattle. There were murmurs of appreciation from the crowd. Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. So I want to say, in front of everyone who matters to us, thank you. Thank you for taking a chance on a lonely rancher. Thank you for building this life with me, and thank you for loving me even when I do not deserve it. Samuel raised his glass. To my wife, Olivia Fletcher, the strongest, smartest, most capable woman I have ever known, and the love of my life. To Olivia, the crowd echoed, raising their glasses. Olivia stood and crossed to Samuel, ignoring propriety to kiss him soundly in front of everyone. The crowd cheered and whistled. When they finally broke apart, both laughing, Olivia turned to address their guests. 25 years ago I had nothing, she said, her voice strong despite the emotion behind it. I was alone, scared, and running out of hope. Samuel did not just give me a job. He gave me a chance to prove what I could do. He treated me as an equal when most men would not. He loved me not despite my past, but because of who I was in the present. He made me believe in the future again. She turned to look at Samuel, her eyes shining. You are my everything, my partner, my love, my home. This ranch, these children, this life, it is more than I ever dreamed possible. And I get to share it with you. I am the luckiest woman alive. There was not a dry eye in the crowd as Samuel and Olivia embraced. Their children gathered around them, Michael and Catherine, tall and capable, the twins still small enough to squeeze between their parents. The five of them stood together, a unit forged by love and strengthened by years of facing life side by side. The celebration continued late into the night, with music and dancing and storytelling. Samuel and Olivia danced together under the stars, moving to a tune played on fiddle and guitar, surrounded by their community and their family. Another 25 years, Olivia asked as they swayed together. At least, Samuel promised. I am not nearly done with you yet, Mrs. Fletcher. The years that followed were good ones, though not without challenges. Catherine went to Denver for her training and returned to establish a school in Lavetta, becoming a beloved teacher. Michael married a rancher's daughter from the next county, a capable young woman named Sarah who fit seamlessly into the Fletcher family. They built a house on the far side of the ranch property and began their own family, giving Samuel and Olivia their first grandchildren. The twins grew into their own people. Daniel showed an interest in veterinary medicine and went east to study, returning with knowledge that benefited not just the Fletcher ranch but the entire county. Emma proved to have a head for business and took over managing the ranch's finances and sales, negotiating deals with buyers that maximized profits while maintaining the family's reputation for quality and honesty. Samuel and Olivia gradually stepped back from the daily operations of the ranch, though neither could ever fully retire. They still rode out most mornings, checking on the herd more from habit and love than necessity. They spent their evenings on the porch they had built onto the expanded house, watching the sun set over land they had worked for decades, surrounded by children and grandchildren. On a cool October evening in 1910, Olivia and Samuel sat in their usual spot, wrapped in blankets against the autumn chill. They were both in their 50s now, slowed slightly by age but still vital, still engaged with life. 34 years, Olivia mused. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I first saw you riding toward me, rifle across your saddle. Sometimes it feels like I have known you my entire life. Both are true, Samuel said. Time is strange that way. You ever think about what would have happened if things had been different? If you had chased me off, if I had moved on to a different ranch? No, Samuel said simply. Because this is the only life I want, the only one that matters. Whatever path we were on before that October morning they brought us to each other. That is all that counts. Olivia leaned against him, and they sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear. Inside the house, they could hear the sounds of family, Michael's children laughing, Catherine's voice reading a story, Emma and Daniel arguing good-naturedly about something. The Fletcher family, loud and loving and everything they had hoped to create. We did well, Olivia said softly. Did we not? We did better than well, Samuel replied. We built something that will last, not just the ranch, though that matters, but a family that knows how to work together, how to support each other, how to face challenges without breaking. We taught our children that love and respect and partnership are the foundation of everything good. That is a legacy worth leaving. I love you, Olivia said, the words as true and necessary as they had been 34 years earlier. I love you too, Samuel said. Thank you for being brave enough to tend my cattle without permission. Best trespass in the history of Colorado. Olivia laughed, the sound carrying across the ranch that had become their life's work and their greatest joy. Inside, someone called that dinner was ready, and they rose to join their family, hand in hand as they had been from the beginning. The Fletcher Ranch continued to prosper under the next generation's management, but it never lost the character that Samuel and Olivia had instilled in it. Hard work, fair dealing, respect for the land and animals, and love that transformed everything it touched. It was a place where second chances were possible, where a woman with nothing but skills and determination could build a life, where a lonely rancher could find the partnership that completed him. And every year on October 15th, the anniversary of that first meeting, Samuel and Olivia rode out together to the spot where he had found her tending his cattle. It became their tradition, a private celebration of the moment that changed both their lives. They would sit together, remembering how far they had come, how much they had built, and how grateful they were for the chance encounter that had led to everything else. As they grew older, their children and grandchildren learned the story by heart. How Grandma Olivia had appeared one morning, bold as brass, treating cattle that were not hers. How Grandpa Samuel had seen past the impropriety to recognize her skill and courage. How he had offered her a job that became a partnership, that became a marriage, that became a family, that became a legacy. It was a love story for the ages, born in the wild west of Colorado Territory, forged through hard work and mutual respect, and strengthened by decades of facing life side by side. It was proof that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected encounters, and that courage and kindness can transform everything. Samuel Fletcher and Olivia Carter Fletcher lived long, full lives on the ranch they built together. They saw their children grow and thrive, their grandchildren multiply, and the 20th century bring changes they could never have imagined that October morning in 1876. But through it all, they remained what they had always been to each other: partners, best friends, and the great love of each other's lives. When Samuel died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, Olivia was holding his hand, as she had held it through countless sunrises and sunsets, through good years and hard years, through the building of a life that neither of them could have created alone. She mourned him deeply, but without regret, knowing they had used every moment they had been given to love each other fully and build something lasting. Olivia lived another 5 years, spending her final days surrounded by the family she and Samuel had created, on the ranch that had been both the setting and the symbol of their love. She died on an October morning as the sun rose over the mountains, painting them in shades of gold and crimson, at peace with a life well lived and a love that would echo through generations. The Fletcher Ranch remained in the family, passed down through Michael and his descendants, each generation adding their own chapter to the story, while honoring the foundation that Samuel and Olivia had built. And every October 15th, family members would ride out to that special spot and remember the day that changed everything. When a cowboy found a woman tending his cattle without permission, hired her, and made her his wife, creating a love story that would inspire their family for generations to come.